Two homeless sisters whispers a desperate plea to Andrew Tate, and what he does next will leave you speechless. This is no ordinary rescue. It's a war on a broken world. Before we dive in, drop a comment with your city, smash that like button and subscribe for more raw, real stories that grip you to the end. Let's roll. The sun blazed over the city, its heat rippling off the pavement. Andrew Tate strode out of a gleaming gym downtown, his broad shoulders squared, his sharp eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. The street hummed with life. Tires screeched, people shouted, and a distant siren wailed. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and tailored pants, he exuded confidence as he headed toward his parked sports car, a fiery red machine that roared with power even when silent. His driver, a lean man named Victor, stood by the vehicle, wiping the hood with a cloth. Victor glanced up as Andrew approached. "Afternoon, sir," Victor said, his voice steady. "Good workout?" "Always," Andrew replied, his tone clipped but friendly. "Let's head to the studio. Got a podcast to record." Victor opened the car door with a smooth motion. Andrew was about to step inside when two small figures stumbled into his path. He paused, looking down. Two girls, both thin and ragged, stood before him. The older one, maybe 12, had tangled hair and a defiant stare. The younger, around 8, clung to her sister's arm, her face smudged with dirt. Their clothes hung loose, patched together from mismatched scraps. The younger girl whispered something to the older one, who then stepped forward. "Please, mister," the older girl said, her voice low but firm. "We need help." Andrew tilted his head, studying them. The younger girl's eyes darted to something behind him, then back to the ground. He followed her glance but saw only the busy street, cars rolling by, people hurrying past. Curious, he crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to their level. "Help with what?" he asked, keeping his voice even. Before the girls could answer, a harsh voice cut through the air. "Hey, you two again!" A burly man in a stained tank top stormed over from a nearby food cart, his face twisted in irritation. "I told you to stop bothering my customers." The older girl flinched but held her ground. The younger one squeezed her sister's arm tighter. Andrew straightened, turning to face the man. "They're talking to me," Andrew said, his words calm but carrying weight. "What's your problem with them?" The cart owner faltered, recognizing Andrew's commanding presence. "They're always around," he grumbled, crossing his arms. "Hanging by my cart, staring at the food. Makes people uncomfortable. They don't buy anything, just loiter." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Have they taken anything?" The man hesitated, then shook his head. "No, but it's only a matter of time. They're trouble waiting to happen." Andrew glanced back at the sisters. The older one met his gaze, her jaw tight. The younger one kept her eyes down, trembling slightly. He turned to the cart owner again. "If they haven't done anything, why chase them off?" he asked. "Sounds like you're mad at them for existing." The man's face reddened, but before he could argue, he squinted at Andrew. "Wait, you're that guy, Andrew Tate, right? The fighter?" His tone shifted, suddenly eager. "Man, I watch your videos all the time." Andrew ignored the flattery. "Answer my question." The cart owner shuffled his feet. "They haven't broken anything, okay? But they're always there. It's weird." Andrew nodded slowly. "Maybe they've got a reason. Ever think of that?" He waved the man off. "Go back to your cart. I'll handle this." The owner lingered for a moment, then trudged away, muttering under his breath. Andrew faced the girls again. The older one whispered something to her sister, who nodded faintly. He leaned in slightly. "What's your story?" he asked. "Why are you out here?" The older girl hesitated, then spoke. "I'm Lena. This is my sister Mara. We don't have anywhere to go." Her voice dropped quieter. "And Mara, she's not okay." Andrew's eyes narrowed. He looked at Mara, noticing her pale skin and the way she swayed slightly, like she might collapse. Something clicked in his mind. This wasn't just hunger or tiredness. He stood up, decisiveness settling over him. "Victor," he called, keeping his eyes on the girls. "We're not going to the studio yet. Get the car ready. We've got a stop to make first." Victor nodded, already moving to start the engine. Andrew gestured to the sisters. "Come with me. Let's figure this out." Lena grabbed Mara's hand, and they followed him to the car, their steps uncertain but quick. As they climbed into the back seat, Andrew slid in beside them, his mind already racing with what he'd do next. The sports car growled as it rolled through the city, its engine a low rumble beneath the chatter of the streets. Andrew sat in the back seat with Lena and Mara, his sharp eyes scanning the passing buildings. The sisters stayed close, Lena's arm around Mara, who leaned against her sister, her breathing shallow. Victor guided the car toward a sleek medical clinic Andrew knew from his training days, a place with skilled doctors and no nonsense. He decided this was the first move. Whatever was wrong with Mara, he'd get it sorted. "Stay sharp, Victor," Andrew said, his voice firm. "We're stopping at the clinic on 5th. I want answers." Victor glanced in the rearview mirror. "Got it, sir. 5 minutes out." Andrew turned to Lena. "Tell me more. What's going on with Mara?" Lena bit her lip, her fingers tightening around Mara's shoulder. "She's been weak for months. Can't keep food down. Her stomach hurts all the time." She paused, then added, "We've been on the streets since last summer. No one's looked at her properly." Mara lifted her head slightly, her voice a whisper. "It's worse now. I feel heavy." Andrew's jaw tightened. He noticed the dark circles under Mara's eyes, the way her hands trembled even at rest. This wasn't just exhaustion. His mind clicked into gear. Years of fighting had taught him to spot when something was off, and this was screaming trouble. The car pulled up to the clinic, a modern building with wide glass doors and a clean white sign. Victor parked smoothly, and Andrew stepped out, motioning for the girls to follow. Lena helped Mara, who moved slowly, her legs unsteady. Inside, the air was cool, the lobby quiet except for the soft tap of a receptionist's keyboard. Andrew approached the desk, his presence commanding attention. "I need a doctor, now," he said, his tone leaving no room for delay. "This girl's sick, we're not waiting." The receptionist, a young woman with a tight ponytail, looked up, startled. "Sir, we need to—" "No forms, no line," Andrew cut in. "Get someone out here." She hesitated, then nodded, picking up a phone. Moments later, a doctor emerged. A tall man with greying hair and a calm demeanor, his badge reading Dr. Philip. He glanced at Andrew, then at the sisters, his eyes lingering on Mara's frail frame. "What's the situation?" Dr. Philip asked, stepping closer. Andrew gestured to Mara. "She's weak, in pain, losing weight. Been like this for months. No one's helped her. Fix that." Dr. Philip crouched beside Mara, his voice gentle. "Hi, I'm Dr. Philip. Can you tell me where it hurts?" Mara pointed to her stomach, her hand shaking. "Here. All the time." The doctor nodded, then stood. "Let's get her into an exam room. I'll need to run some tests." He waved over a nurse, a brisk woman with short hair, who guided Mara and Lena down a hallway. Andrew followed, his steps deliberate. The exam room was small, lined with equipment that beeped faintly. Mara sat on the table, Lena beside her, while Dr. Philip checked her pulse and pressed lightly on her abdomen. Mara winced, and Andrew's fists clenched at his sides. He hated seeing weakness ignored, especially in kids who couldn't fight back. After a few minutes, Dr. Philip stepped back. "I'm ordering blood work and an ultrasound. Her symptoms suggest something serious. Could be an infection or worse. We'll know soon." "How soon?" Andrew pressed. "Results in an hour," the doctor replied. "Stay here, I'll rush it." As Dr. Philip left with the nurse, Andrew pulled out his phone, texting Victor. "Keep the car ready. Might need to move fast." He glanced at Lena, who sat stiffly, her eyes locked on Mara. "You've been taking care of her alone?" he asked. Lena nodded. "Since our mum died. No one else would. We've been in shelters, alleys, wherever we could sleep. I tried to get her food, but she can't eat much." Andrew leaned against the wall, processing her words. 2 kids, fending for themselves, with Mara fading fast. His mind flashed to his own battles, ring fights, business deals. But this was different. This was raw, human, urgent. The door opened and the nurse returned, wheeling in an ultrasound machine. She worked quickly, spreading gel on Mara's stomach and sliding the wand over her skin. The screen flickered, showing shapes Andrew couldn't read. Mara stared at the ceiling, her breathing uneven. Lena gripped her hand. Dr. Philip re-entered, studying the screen. His face tightened. "There's a mass, looks like it's pressing on her intestines. Could be a tumor. He turned to Andrew. "We need a biopsy to confirm, but this isn't good. She's malnourished too. Her body's shutting down." Andrew's eyes darkened. "What's the plan?" "Surgery," Dr. Phillips said. "Soon as we can. If it's cancer, we remove it and start treatment. If it's something else, we'll know once we're in there. But she's fragile. Time's short." "Then do it," Andrew said, his voice like steel. "Whatever she needs, I'm covering it. Make it happen." Duxfield nodded, already motioning to the nurse. "We'll prep her now. I'll call the hospital. It's 2 blocks away. They've got a surgical team." Andrew stepped closer to Mara. "You hear that? We're fixing this. You just hang on." Mara managed a small nod, her eyes wide but trusting. Lena whispered something to her, too quiet for Andrew to catch. The nurse began arranging transport, and Andrew pulled Dr. Phillip aside. "Keep me posted. Every step," he said. "And get her a room after somewhere private. No crowded wards." "Understood," Dr. Phillip replied. "We're moving her now." The nurse wheeled Mara out, Lena trailing close. Andrew followed them to the lobby, where an ambulance waited outside, its lights flashing silently. He watched as they loaded Mara in, Lena climbing beside her. The doors shut, and the vehicle sped off, siren cutting through the city noise. Andrew turned to Victor, who'd pulled the car up. "Hospital, now! We're not losing them." Victor floored it, the sports car tearing down the street, keeping pace with the ambulance's flashing lights. Andrew stared ahead, his mind set. These girls weren't just another problem to solve, they were a mission. And he never backed down from a fight. The hospital's emergency entrance buzzed with activity as Andrew strode through the sliding doors, his boots echoing on the tiled floor. The ambulance had just arrived, and he spotted Lena helping Mara onto a stretcher as paramedics rushed them inside. Victor stayed by the car, ready for whatever came next. Andrew caught up to the sisters, his eyes locked on Mara's pale face. She looked smaller against the stretcher's white sheet, but her grip on Lena's hand was fierce. He followed them into the chaos of the ER, nurses barking orders, machines humming, families waiting anxiously. A nurse with a clipboard intercepted him. "Sir, are you with them?" "Yeah," Andrew said, his voice cutting through the noise. "They're my responsibility. Where's she going?" "Surgery prep," the nurse replied, scribbling a note. "We're taking her straight up. You can wait in the family area, 3rd floor." Andrew nodded, then turned to Lena. "Go with her. I'll be right behind you." Lena hesitated, her eyes searching his face. "You're staying?" "Damn right," he said. "We're in this now. Go." She gave a quick nod, then hurried after Mara's stretcher as it disappeared behind double doors. Andrew took the stairs 2 at a time, reaching the 3rd floor in moments. The waiting area was stark. Hard chairs, a flickering TV, and a coffee machine that gurgled in the corner. He paced, his mind racing. A tumor. Surgery. 2 kids with no one else. This wasn't just about paying a bill. This was a war against a system that let them slip through the cracks. His phone buzzed. A text from his podcast producer. "Where are you? Guest slots open. Fans are pissed." Andrew typed back, "Emergency, handle it." He silenced the device and shoved it into his pocket. Fame could wait. Minutes later, a doctor approached. Short, stocky, with a shaved head and steady hands. His badge read Dr. Patel. "You're with Mara?" he asked. "Yeah," Andrew said. "What's the word?" Dr. Patel adjusted his glasses. "We've confirmed it's a tumor, likely malignant. It's wrapped around her lower intestine, causing the pain and weight loss. Surgery's set for an hour from now. We're removing it, then testing to see if it's spread." Andrew crossed his arms. "She's tough enough for this." "She's weak," Dr. Patel admitted, "but we've got no choice. She won't last long without it. We're stabilizing her now. IV fluids, nutrients. It's a risk, but she's got a shot." "Make it a win," Andrew said. "I'm covering everything. Best team, best equipment, no cutting corners." Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "We'll do our job. She's in good hands." He paused. "Her sister mentioned they're homeless. Any family we should call?" Andrew shook his head. "Just me for now. Get moving." The doctor left, and Andrew sat, his elbows on his knees. He pictured Mara's trembling hands, Lena's fierce stare. They'd been fighting alone. Now they had him. His thoughts shifted to the streets they'd come from. How many others were out there, ignored? He'd fix this one first, then figure out the rest. Lena appeared at the hallway's end, her shoulders slumped, but her eyes dry. She walked over and sat beside him, silent for a moment. "They're taking her in soon," she said finally. "She's scared, but she's asking for you." Andrew stood. "Let's go see her." They entered a prep room where Mara lay, hooked to machines that beeped steadily. Her small frame was swamped by the hospital gown, but her gaze found Andrew instantly. "You're still here," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Told you I'm not going anywhere," he said, stepping closer. "You're about to kick this thing's ass. You ready?" Mara managed a faint smile. "I don't feel strong." "Strength's not feeling," Andrew said, leaning in. "It's doing. You've been holding on this long. That's steel. Now let the docs finish it." Lena squeezed Mara's hand. "He's right. You're tougher than anyone." A nurse entered, pushing a cart. "Time to move her. You can stay till the doors." Andrew and Lena walked beside Mara's stretcher as it rolled toward the operating room. The hallway stretched long and bright, the air thick with antiseptic. Mara clutched a thin blanket, her eyes darting between them. At the OR doors, she reached for Andrew's hand. "Don't leave Lena alone," she said, her voice fading as the sedative kicked in. "Never," he promised, his grip firm until the nurses wheeled her through. The doors swung shut, and Andrew turned to Lena. "She's a fighter, like you." Lena stared at the floor. "She's all I've got. Been that way since Mum got sick. Cancer took her fast. Now Mara—" Her voice cracked, but she swallowed it down. Andrew guided her back to the waiting area. "You're not losing her. We're beating this." They sat, the clock ticking above them. Lena spoke again, quieter. "We lived in a car after Mum died. Then it got towed. Been bouncing around since. Alleys, shelters. Mara started hurting a few months back. I thought it was hunger. Kept her near food carts to cheer her up, but she couldn't eat." Andrew listened, his jaw tight. "Why no help?" "Shelters don't care," she said. "They give you a bed if you're lucky, then kick you out. Doctors cost money we don't have." He nodded, filing it away. The system was broken, kicking kids to the curb. He'd seen it before, but this time it was personal. An hour crawled by, then 2. Andrew stood, stretching his legs, when Dr. Patel returned, his scrubs damp with sweat. Lena shot to her feet beside him. "Surgery's done," the doctor said. "We got the tumor out, big ugly thing. She's stable but weak. Biopsy's off to the lab. If it's cancer, we'll need chemo, maybe more. She's in recovery now, you can see her soon." Relief hit Andrew like a punch, but he kept his face steady. "Good work. What's next?" "Rest for her," Dr. Patel said. "Then we plan." "She's not out of danger yet." Andrew clapped the doctor's shoulder. "Keep her alive. I'll handle the rest." As Dr. Patel walked off, Andrew turned to Lena. "She's through the first round. Now we build her back up." Lena's eyes glistened, but she nodded. "Thanks. For everything." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We're just starting." The hospital's evening hush settled over the 3rd floor, the city's glow seeping through the window where Andrew stood. Mara was in recovery, her small body battling after surgery. Lena sat nearby, her hands clasped tight, staring at the hallway where nurses moved like shadows. Andrew's mind churned. Mara's fight was far from over, and Lena's words about shelters and streets gnawed at him. He'd pulled them off the pavement, but this wasn't just about one win. He turned to Lena, his voice low but steady. "She's through the hard part," he said. "Now we make sure she stays strong. You good?" Lena nodded, her jaw firm despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "She's alive. That's what matters." Andrew paced to the coffee machine, pouring a cup he didn't drink. "Tell me about those shelters. What's the deal?" Lena shifted in her seat. "Crowded. Dirty. They shove you in, feed you slop if you're lucky, then push you out by morning. No one checks on you, sick or not, you're just a number. We stopped going after Mara got worse. Streets were safer." His grip tightened on the cup. "And no one stepped up, doctors, workers. Them I'd look at her, say she needed tests, then send us away when we couldn't pay," Lena said. "One guy told me to figure it out." "Figure out what? We had nothing." Andrew set the cup down, his mind clicking into overdrive. He'd seen systems fail, corrupt gyms, shady deals. But this was a machine chewing up kids and spitting them out. Mara's tumor was one battle. The war was bigger. He'd crush it, starting now. Dr. Patel approached, his scrub swapped for a jacket, carrying a tablet. "She's awake," he said. "Groggy, but asking for you both. Room 312, private, like you wanted." Andrew led Lena to the elevator, the ride silent but charged. Room 312 was small, its walls bare except for a monitor tracking Mara's pulse. She lay propped on pillows, her eyes half open, a bandage peeking from under her gown. She managed a weak wave. "You made it," Andrew said, stepping to her bedside. "Told you you're a fighter." Mara's lips twitched upward. "Hurts, but I'm here." Lena sat close, brushing Mara's hair back. "You scared me, dummy. Had to keep you on your toes," Mara rasped, her humor faint but real. Andrew watched them, then pulled Dr. Patel aside. "Biopsy results tomorrow," the doctor said. "If it's cancer, we start chemo fast. She's stable for now. Resting's key." "Keep her comfortable," Andrew said, "and speed up those results. I want a plan by morning." Dr. Patel nodded and left. Andrew turned back to Mara. "You like games?" Her eyes brightened slightly. "Yeah." "Cards mostly," he grinned. "Good. I've got a deck in the car. We'll play later. Winner gets bragging rights." Mara giggled, then winced, clutching her side. Lena shot Andrew a grateful look. He stepped into the hall, texting Victor, "Bring my gym bag up, cards inside, and grab some kid books from the gift shop." He'd keep Mara's spirits high. Little victories mattered. Back inside, Lena spoke up. "Why are you doing this? You don't know us." Andrew leaned against the wall. "Saw you two out there fighting with nothing. Reminded me of me. Starting with zero, clawing up. Difference is, I had a chance. You didn't." "That's bullshit. I'm fixing it." Lena studied him, then nodded. "Okay." The door opened, and Victor entered, gym bag in hand. He set it down, pulling out a worn deck of cards and 3 colorful books, tales of pirates and explorers. Andrew handed them to Mara. "Pick one," he said. "I'll read. You rest." She chose a pirate story, and Andrew started, his voice deep and steady, painting scenes of ships and treasure. Mara listened, her eyes wide, pain forgotten for a moment. Lena relaxed, leaning back in her chair. The room filled with the rhythm of his words, a brief escape from the sterile walls. Halfway through, a woman in a grey coat entered, older, with sharp features and a clipboard. "I'm Miss Carter, hospital social worker," she said. "I need to discuss the girl's situation." Andrew set the book down. "What situation?" "They're minors, unaccompanied," Miss Carter said. "No guardian, no address. Once Mara's discharged, we have to place them... foster care, most likely." Lena stiffened. "No. We stay together." "Tamil will," Andrew said, stepping forward. "I'm handling it. No foster split." Ms. Carter frowned. "Sir, you're not family. Legal guardianship requires..." "We'll sort the legal," Andrew cut in. "Money's no issue. They're not going anywhere but with me until we figure this out." She hesitated. "I'll need documentation and a home check." "You'll get it," he said. "Tomorrow. Now let them rest." Miss Carter left, her heels clicking down the hall. Andrew turned to Lena. "No one's taking you two apart. Got it?" Lena's shoulders eased. "Got it." Night deepened outside, the city light sharp against the dark. Andrew stayed, reading until Mara drifted off, the book resting on his lap. Lena dozed in her chair, cards scattered beside her. He stood, stretching, then stepped to the window. Mara's fight was one piece. Chemo might come, and he'd bankroll it. But the shelters, the streets, the whole damn mess, that was a dragon he'd slay next. His phone buzzed. His producer again, fans raging. "Podcast's a mess. Fix this." Andrew typed back, "Tell them I'm saving lives. They'll wait." He pocketed it, his gaze hard. Tomorrow he'd meet with his lawyer, set up a fund, not just for Mara, but for every kid the system ditched. He'd build something, housing, clinics, a lifeline. A soft knock pulled him back. Dr. Patel stood there holding a file. Biopsy's in early, he said. It's cancer, aggressive. Chemo starts day after tomorrow if she's strong enough. Andrew's fists clenched. She will be. Get it ready. The hospital room held its breath as dawn crept through the blinds, casting thin lines across Mara's sleeping form. Andrew stood by her bed, the biopsy file still heavy in his mind. Cancer, aggressive, chemo looming. Lena slept in a chair, her head resting on her arm, cards fanned out beside her. Dr. Patel had left to prep the next steps, but Andrew's focus stretched beyond the room. Mara's fight was personal now, but the city's failures, shelters dumping kids, streets swallowing them whole, lit a fire in him. He'd save her, then dismantle the mess that bred this. His phone vibrated softly. Victor, car's here, lawyer's on his way. Andrew stepped into the hall, keeping his voice low. Good. Tell him to bring cash and contracts. We're moving fast. Back inside, Mara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Morning, she mumbled, her voice thin but clear. Morning, champ, Andrew said, pulling a chair close. How's the toughest kid I know? Sore, she admitted, touching her side. But I'm still here. Lena woke, stretching stiffly. You better be. I'm not losing at cards again. Andrew grinned. Deal them later, right now you rest. Big day ahead. A knock interrupted them. Dr. Patel entered with the nurse, both in crisp scrubs. She's stable, the doctor said. Chemo's set for tomorrow, small dose to start, see how she handles it. We'll monitor close. Andrew nodded. Give her the best, no half measures. Always, Dr. Patel replied, then hesitated. Social worker's back today. Wants a plan for them post-discharge. She'll get one, Andrew said. I'm on it. As the medical team left, Lena looked at Andrew. What's that mean? Means you're not going back to the streets, he said. Or some Foster shuffle. I'm setting up a place. Safe, solid, yours. Mara heals. You both stay together. Her eyes widened. You can do that? Watch me, he said, his tone iron. The door swung open again. Victor, with a broad-shouldered man in a suit, carrying a briefcase. This is Mark, Victor said. Best lawyer I know. Mark shook Andrew's hand, his grip firm. Heard you're funding a kid's treatment. What else? More, Andrew said, stepping aside to show Mara and Lena. Cancer care for her, full ride, hospital, meds, whatever it takes. Then a bigger move, housing and a clinic for kids like them. Shelters are trash, crowded, useless. I want to set up where they get real help, not handouts. Start small, scale up. Can you make it legal? Mark opened his briefcase, pulling out papers. With your cash, yeah. Treatment's easy. Wire funds today, hospitals covered, the rest. Property, permits, staff. Takes time, but I'll draft it. Temporary guardianship for them till it's built. Social worker won't fight that. Do it, Andrew said, and fast. Chemo's tomorrow. By then I want this locked. Mark nodded, scribbling notes. I'll file by noon. Need a name for the project. Andrew glanced at Mara, then Lena. Call it Sisters Stand. They're why it's happening. Victor smirked. Fits. I'll scout locations. Something close, cheap, fixable. As Mark and Victor left, Miss Carter returned, her clipboard unchanged. Mr. Tate, she began. Here's your answer, Andrew cut in, handing her a card with marked number. Lawyers filing guardianship. Funds are in play. Housing, clinic, all of it. They stay with me till it's ready. Check it tomorrow. She scanned the card, surprised. This is unusual. I'll verify. You will, he said. They're not your problem anymore. Miss Carter left, and Andrew turned to the sisters. Told you. Together. No split. Mara smiled faintly. You're like a superhero. Nah, he said. Just a guy who hates losing. You're the heroes here. Lena laughed, soft but real. Guess we're stuck with you. Damn right, he said, tossing the cards to her. Shuffle. I'm winning this round. The game started, laughter cutting through the room's tension. Nurses peeked in, smiling at the scene. Mara giggling despite her pain, Lena dealing with mock seriousness, Andrew trash-talking every play. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, until Dr. Patel returned with a tray of vials. Prep for tomorrow, he said. She's strong enough, vitals are good. Andrew watched the nurse hook Mara to an IV, her small hand steady now. You've got this, he told her. Round two's yours. She nodded, gripping the cards. Better still beat you after? Challenge accepted, he said, dealing her in. Later, as evening fell, a commotion stirred the hall. 5 kids, scruffy and loud, burst in, trailed by a flustered nurse and a young woman in a shelter vest. They're from the girls' old spot, the woman said. Heard Mara was here, wouldn't stay put. Lena's face lit up. That's Jay, Kiki, the twins, and Rico. They're our crew. The kids swarmed Mara's bed, chattering over each other. You okay? Jay, a wiry boy, asked. Heard you fought a monster. Tumor, Mara corrected, grinning. And yeah, I won. Kiki, a girl with braids, spotted Andrew. Who's the big guy? Friend, Lena said. He's why we're here. Andrew crouched to their level. You lot tough like them? Tougher, Rico bragged, flexing a skinny arm. Good, Andrew said. Stick around. Got stories for you. Fights, cars, the works. He launched into a tale of his boxing days. Fists flying in the air, engines roaring in his words. The kids hung on every line, gasping at the knockouts, cheering the wins. Mara listened, eyes bright, while Lena joined in, adding her own street yarns. The room buzzed with life. A stark shift from its quiet start. Night closed in. The kids curling up on chairs and the floor, spent but happy. Andrew stepped to the window, watching the city pulse below. Mara's chemo was tomorrow. Step 1. Sisera's stand was step 2. Mark would lock the funds. Victor would find the site. But step 3? That was war. Tearing down a system that let kids rot. He'd use every dollar, every fight in him, to build something unbreakable. If this story inspired you, smash that like button and subscribe for more raw, real stories that grip you to the end.